Colonel Rob Maness has a lifelong record of providing dedicated service to this nation. Having worked his way up from the enlisted ranks to full colonel, he served our country for more than 32 years. He has served as a bomber squadron commander, bomb disposal technician, Joint Chiefs of Staff Operations Officer, assisted the National Security Team with the campaign plan for the global war on terrorism. He authored the first theater nuclear war plan and served as the Vice Commander of America's largest airborne intelligence wing. Colonel Rob Maness is a true American hero. This is Rob Maness Live.
Yeah, hey guys, good morning. We start with breaking news. The head of the IRGC intelligence operation, Major General Majid Kadhimi, has been killed. According to a senior Israeli official, a joint U.S. and Israeli strike overnight took out the man who was considered effectively the number 2 within the IRGC. He's one of the few senior commanders, I'm told, who managed to survive multiple waves of Israeli and American targeting over the past year. He oversaw intelligence operations that directly targeted U.S. forces and allies across the region. This comes as we are continuing to track developments and the possibility of a ceasefire deal between the United States and Iran. Yesterday, I spoke with President Trump, and he said if a deal does not happen this week, quote, you're going to see bridges and power plants dropping all over their country. If they don't make a deal and fast, I'm considering blowing everything up and taking over the oil. Now, a new report today in Reuters says a framework to end hostilities has been put together by Pakistan and exchanged with Iran and the U.S. overnight, outlining a 2-tier approach with an immediate ceasefire followed by a comprehensive agreement. Despite these diplomatic conversations, U.S. and Israeli planes continue to hammer the Iranian regime as we are gathering new details about that daring rescue operation over the weekend that led that U.S. crew member to being rescued. Hundreds of U.S. Special Forces on the ground in southwestern Iran. You can see the province here where they were located. It was an hours-long operation, but again, ultimately it was successful as a result of U.S. military and intelligence excellence. Israel's Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu said overnight, I spoke earlier with President Trump and personally congratulated him on his bold decision and a perfectly executed American mission to rescue the downed pilot from enemy territory. The president expressed his appreciation for Israel's help. I am deeply proud that our cooperation on and off the battlefield is unprecedented and that Israel could contribute to saving a brave American warrior. As this is taking place, the Iranians are continuing their ballistic missile attacks against Israel. A number of ballistic missiles were launched overnight towards central Israel. You can see aftermath video here in the northern part of the country. This is the city of Haifa. And at this scene of a direct impact from a ballistic missile, there are still 2 people missing. 2 were killed in this strike and 2 again are believed to be buried under the rubble. So a lot of kinetic activity across the region, and the United States is preparing for the possibility, if a deal is not reached, that there will be significant escalation here in the region, and President Trump has promised to target Iranian power and energy infrastructure. Yeah. Guys?
All of this always an option on the table. But Trey, the breaking news that you just reported about this high-ranking Iranian official that was killed in the joint U.S.-Israeli airstrike, how could his death impact these potential negotiations to end this war that are ongoing right now?
Yeah, so Major General Majid Kadhimi was the man responsible for building the intelligence behind the current Iranian operations that are targeting U.S. forces and allies across the region. This includes Gulf countries. And so the fact that he was taken out, he is considered to be the number 2 person in the IRGC right now. And I'm told that there was actually another official taken out as well in that same strike. And that official is the commander of the Quds Forces Special Operations Unit, Ashkar Bakiri. And again, this gives you a sense of how the Israelis and the Americans are working together with their intelligence agencies to try and target individuals within the IRGC who are responsible for the ongoing attacks, again, to put pressure on the Iranian regime so that they come to the negotiating table and make a good faith deal.
You just wonder how many more of these individuals need to be killed before Iran realizes that these people.
How many more? Good afternoon, my fellow Americans. Welcome back to More War Monday on the Rob Maness Show. We're live on Worldview Tube and X Spaces simulcast. Well, that's the good question, isn't it? How many more? Iran's destruction continues, my friends. Just hours ago, that number 2 commander in Iran's Iranian Revolutionary Guard Corps, the power structure that keeps the mullahs in place, their chief of intelligence, was terminated in a major strike, as you just heard. Israel and America are sending a very clear message. They will not tolerate Iranian aggression. They're not waiting around for permission. And at the same time, we're watching the Strait of Hormuz, where Iran loves to threaten the world's oil supply and freak everybody out. But let's be clear. While much of the world scrambles, this isn't really America's problem anymore. And I really mean that. We're energy independent. We don't need to play world policeman for everybody else's oil. And in a really dumb move, France and other European nations that used to be part of NATO, that's the way I'll characterize it, appear to have cut their own deals to get their ships passing freely through the strait with Iran. Macron is pushing his own approach instead of helping the United States. Think of it. He's even calling a forced operation unrealistic. And at the same time, questions are growing louder and louder. Is it finally time for America to withdraw from the North Atlantic Treaty Organization alliance and let Europe handle its own security? New York Times, did you get that? NATO, what it stands for? And in the middle of all this chaos, we're seeing powerful reminders of what our real American values look like. The principle of no man left behind. And we're joined again by veteran TV news producer, Substack host at The Analyst, former diplomat, and current anchor for Real American Sunrise Early Edition, plus the News Hour Weekend Edition on 77 Talk Radio, WABC, Jake Novak. Jake, welcome back to the show.
Thanks for having me. Anything going on lately? It's been kind of quiet since we last had a show together.
One of the most boring couple of weeks I've ever experienced in my life.
I'm so tired of this.
All right. The president and the chairman of the Joint Chiefs and Secretary of War and the director of the CIA just had a press conference. I've devoted the last segment of the show to the rescue operation, but feel free to flow anything into the conversation that you might have heard in there that might be relevant. But let's talk about how it's going, because there's just a whole lot of, I don't know where they're coming from, people saying America's losing kind of folks that appear to have no clue as to what's really happening to Iran's capabilities according to the military objectives.
Yeah, we have 1 million Tokyo Roses right now on social media. It's the same thing as Tokyo Rose, just saying nonsense that back in the days of pirate radio, I guess only a few of our sailors heard this on their ships, but in general, the American public didn't hear it, and they certainly didn't have, they didn't become amplifiers for this nonsense. This is incredible, sad. It's incredibly sad to see so many people believing this ridiculous rhetoric that we're losing the war. They're repeating it, talking about it, and so much so now that it's now become an item of personal prestige for them. So if they turn out to be so wrong as they really are, they're going to be upset. So now they're rooting for bad things to happen so that they can be proved right. It's a really just sad situation. I'm not surprised by it, though. Honestly, I think I've said to you before that if 9/11 happened today, you'd have at least half the country blaming America for it. We have a social media operation now that is easily convinces people, including people who are in office, to repeat the most anti-American nonsense. And we continue to see it. It's just amazing to me. We need a scoreboard so these people can see that it's 126-0.
Yeah, well, let's talk about this. Objectives. Here are the objectives one more time, folks. The destruction of the Iranian ballistic missiles, their launchers, their inventories of missiles, their production capability, which is all over the place, folks. The destruction of their Navy. Last I checked, over 150 ships are at the bottom. And you can correct me if I'm wrong, but I don't think anybody's found a sea mine in the Strait of Hormuz yet. And then their nukes. You know, we've still got that enriched uranium that's out there. I believe that we know where it's at. Of course, I'm just speculating, but I believe we know where it's at. And I also believe that this whole plan about negotiations is about getting that into our custody. And then you've got the proxies. The proxies and the command and control targets, which we just heard a little bit about there, the command and control targets, those are not primary objectives, but they are necessary targets to achieve the primary objectives, right?
Yeah, and you said something else at the beginning as well. I don't believe that these negotiations are really serious. Not so much from our part, but from Iran. Iran's
Hmm.
radical people, they're all the way down to the bottom. They're not going to do any kind of a ceasefire or agreement like this. People are absolutely suicidal. There's never been any real serious negotiation going on. And, walking the walk means more than talking the talk. We haven't stopped any of our attacks on Iran. The only thing that we've done is we continue to delay the attacks on their so-called civilian infrastructure. There is no such thing, though, in a militaristic terrorist state. There's no such thing as civilian infrastructure. Um, this is clearly going very, very well, as it should be. We are a much more superior military nation than Iran, even though that's all they've been planning for all these years is to be a terrorist and killing it. And we have actually other things that we do in this country, and Israel is also superior to them for many reasons. But it's still a country of 93 million people. It's a very large country. I mean, people need to take a look at the map of Iran. This is not some small, dinky country. It's large geographically. And no, it's not going to be something that's going to be wrapped up in 5 or 3 weeks. We're already in week 6 or starting in week 7, I believe. So it's going to take some time. Gas prices, where they were even lower than they were 4 years ago, that's our biggest paycheck, bill for this war so far, really, other than the 14 or I guess 20 Americans have been killed in this. I'm sorry, that's not a big price tag. People trying to make it that are being like today's modern day Tokyo Roses.
Oh, they certainly are. Yeah, the one of the things that I've found interesting is the targeting of the Basij, the IRGC enforcers that are trying to keep the population under control. And there's been some discussion this week, even from the president himself, about how we've sent arms to the resistance in Iran. Talk us through that. Have we seen evidence that any of those weapons have gotten to the resistance? I know I watch this very closely because I'm looking for it. I haven't really seen it other than the one attack the MEK did on Khamenei's compound before he was killed. I think they used about 250 folks, but other than that, I haven't really seen anything.
No, and that tells me what I think we knew even before these reports of the delivered small arms. There is some kind of major linchpin that is still in effect in probably Tehran, certainly Tehran, but probably a number of other cities as well, that makes it too dangerous for the people to come out right now. Mm-hmm. Also, there's the issue of no internet connectivity. How are you going to coordinate with people if you can't communicate with them at all? We need to get more Starlink in there. We need that's another key linchpin before any of this can really get going. But we are seeing, however, we saw over the weekend one town in Iran where it looked like the local police dropped their arms and ran away, and that small town might now be in resistance hands. We'll see if that means anything going forward. But clearly a little bit more needs to be done. We know that the police forces, when they start going out onto the street, though, they know that they're in danger. And some of the Iranian people have recorded on their phones the sound of the drones that have been killing the besieged forces and playing it up on speakers, probably like a Beats Spill speaker, and scaring them and scattering them away. But right now, clearly, Colonel, there's something that has not happened yet that the Iranian people are waiting to happen to start really going out on the streets and really, really doing more than just temporary celebrating. You know, when bombs go off there, the people do come out because that's a safe moment for them. And they start to celebrate because not only do they know that the Americans and the Israelis aren't targeting any civilians, so they feel safe, but they also know that when those big bombs are going off, the besieged forces kind of also go into hiding for a little while. That's all we've seen so far. Easy for us to say that they should be getting out and doing something right now. There's something else that they're waiting for. I don't know what it is, but I do know it hasn't happened yet.
Yeah, I mean, the president mentioned that we shipped arms to a Kurdish group and that they kept some of them or all of them early on. So I'm interested to see exactly who that is because he threatened today in his discussion with the press out on the White House lawn that he knows who they are and we'll make them pay for that. So that's unfortunate if they double crossed us because it tells me that that's the thing we're waiting for is the weapons and Starlink. Starlink was part of that discussion to get into the hands of enough resistance folks where they can actually do something without being overwhelmed. But we got to take a break, Jake. When we come back, we'll talk about the Strait of Hormuz. I want to dive into that with you. and get beyond the military aspect of it and into the economic aspect of it and the marketing. I'll be right back with Jake Novak.
Hello, I'm Brandon House. Would you like to gain access to over 20 years of my radio shows, TV shows, my books? I've written 15 books, and most of those books are ebooks now. And we have conference DVDs, conferences where we filmed our conferences at the Ozarks, literally starting 20 years ago. It's all available in our archived vault. All you have to do is go to worldviewtube.com/vault, worldviewtube.com/vault, and for a reasonable monthly fee, you gain access to over 20 years of Christian worldview programming, news, information, books, documentaries, and a powerful search engine. And folks, it's a great way not only to educate yourself, equip yourself, but it's a big way that you can help fund our continuation as a broadcast network. Please check it out. worldviewtube.com/vault, worldviewtube.com/vault, and help us continue pushing out a Christian worldview.
So to those countries that can't get fuel, many of which refuse to get involved in the decapitation of Iran, we had to do it ourselves. I have a suggestion. Number one, buy oil from the United States of America. We have plenty. We have so much. And number two, build up some delayed courage. Should have done it before. Should have done it with us, as we asked. Go to the strait and just take it, protect it, use it for yourselves. Iran has been essentially decimated. The hard part is done, so it should be easy. And in any event, when this conflict is over, the strait will open up naturally. It'll just open up naturally. They're going to want to be able to sell oil because that's all they have to try and rebuild. It will.
Welcome back to the Rob Maness Show. It's More War Monday. We're live on Worldview Tube and our X Spaces simulcast. And my guest today is Jake Novak, regular on the show here. But we're talking about the situation with Iran. And, the president there, that was 4 days ago, I believe, talking about the Strait of Hormuz. And let's just go through this systematically. Jake, the Strait of Hormuz, I have a question for you because you've studied this area historically a lot more closely than I have. But Aren't most of the little islands that are in the strait that the Iranians use to control it the property of Arab Gulf states?
They are, and there's been a lot of discussion about after this war, these Arab Gulf states will take more strong possession of these islands in the first place. When Iran became the militaristic state that it is back in 1979. The Gulf states that we talk about now so often, like the United Arab Emirates and Bahrain, et cetera, even Saudi Arabia, were much weaker and much less wealthy than they are now. So they weren't really able to offer any resistance. This is just one of those things like one day they dream of it coming back to them. Maybe there's some Japanese nationalists that expect some of the islands there to come back to them too. I don't know, but I'll tell you now. Of course, they're making that very clear now that they expect to get those islands back. So yes, that's one aspect of it. And the other aspect is just the geography. If you take a look at the strait, it's just a part of the Persian Gulf that puts all shipping very, very close to the Iranian mainland and those islands as well. It just makes it easy. It's a naval bottleneck, and it's easy to pick ships off there. And it's important to understand that ever since 1979, the fact that Iran has been so hostile to anyone and been a terrorist country has made it more expensive to do all business through the Strait of Hormuz. We've all been paying a bit of a protection racket premium on anything that goes through that strait, not just oil, for 47 years. And I conservatively estimate the cost of that, and I can go through the numbers with you later, but I conservatively estimate the cost to the American economy, just the U.S. economy, at well over $2 quadrillion. Because every single day, every single barrel of oil, every single item that goes through that strait is more expensive because you have to pay a little bit more knowing that Iran is this hostile country that you're going right up to their doorstep with. And it's at least $2 quadrillion. And I think I'm being very, very conservative in that estimate.
I can't even, in my mind's eye, imagine $2 quadrillion. But you touched on something I want to talk about here to give people the truth. Look, oil is the oil and LNG, liquefied natural gas, are the two main commodities that go in out of the strait and to the rest of the world. But the United States has divested itself of a need to use those commodities at all in our country. So really, in a simplified version, it's a little to no impact on us. But something is happening with the markets. Gas is going up, and those kind of things at the pump here in the United States, and that's because of the way the markets work, right? How do the markets work? And is that that seems to me it should be a short-term thing until the markets equalize and other sources are found, discovered, or become affordable.
Yeah, what you're describing is exactly a situation. We don't have a supply issue here in the United States when it comes to energy, but we are paying a higher price because the price for oil, whether it's drilled here in the United States or drilled further away, is set by the markets. It's a global price. Now, there is one divorce or dichotomy in oil prices. There's something called Brent crude, which is what most of Eastern Europe and Asia trades. It's a slightly different kind of crude oil, and it comes from different parts of the world. And then there's WTI, West Texas Intermediate Light Sweet Crude. And light sweet crude is always cheaper than Brent, but not all that much. A few bucks here and there. That's global traders who are speculating on the price. And before you get angry at those speculators, those are the guys who are going to drive the price of oil way down in a flash when things change and that war ends. So don't be angry at them. You don't want to freeze them out of the process. They're the ones who get the prices moving one way or the other when they should. So that's what's going to happen. But we have a price issue. No matter how much supply we have, we're still bound by a global trading market that will drive the prices higher if the rest of the world's supply is constrained in this way. So we're paying more at the pump, but as I said earlier, we're still paying less at the pump than we were paying in the summer of 2022. And when you adjust for inflation, we're really paying a lot less than we were almost 4 years ago. I don't like seeing a 4 handle at the gas station, which many of you are seeing right now, but I do think it's going to come down quickly when the war ends. And I feel like we're kind of maybe a little past the halfway point of that right now. But we'll see. Again, to me, this is not a long-term situation. And compared to that $250 billion or so that our economy has paid because of Iran simply existing, I mean, let's talk about the barrel of oil here for a second. There have been times in my lifetime where oil went for $10 a barrel. Right now, it's at 109. We've seen it between 50 and 70 for most of the last 20 years or so, with exceptions here and there.
Yeah.
The premium on every barrel of oil is at least, I think, probably $3 or to $4 a barrel, just because Iran exists. In other words, oil would be cheaper if Iran, the Islamist country, didn't exist. But it does. We consume in this country 80 to 100, basically $100 million, 100 million barrels of oil every day. So that's $100 million more that we're paying for oil from the oil companies, right? That make it. Every single day, at least, and I'm just going to say $1. It's probably more like 300 million, but let's say it's $1.
Yeah.
Over 47 years, every single day, that's trillions of dollars right there. And I'm not including the extra prices that we pay because Iran exists in our airline tickets, in our defense budget. We have. So if you're complaining that the cost of this war for the consumer is too much, don't, because you're messing with the wrong guy with Jake Novak. I'm going to tell you how for 47 years it's been a lot more expensive. This is a small price to pay.
Yeah, and I wanted to ask you about there are other commodities that come out of the Persian Gulf that come on ships from there. Now, there was a storyline narrative going, well, we're going to run out of fertilizer. Costs for farmers are being driven through the roof. Now, I have a brother-in-law that farms. I haven't heard anything from him. Usually I hear from him if something's going on that's driving his cost up, especially this time of year. So the story kind of disappeared. Is there any other critically strategic material that comes out of there to the rest of the world that's going to affect global markets that would touch us?
Yeah, there's some chemicals. There's some chemicals that also run through there, but it's really oil and fertilizer. Those are the two big things. And in some cases, what we call dry goods like food and things like that. It's a major waterway. The kind of which that just geography requires. This is a way to get from one part of the globe to the next. It's like the Panama Canal on our side of the globe. So it's not about necessarily a political failure. This isn't like the very strong argument and good argument we had in this country for years. why are we importing so much oil when we have as many reserves as anyone else? We seem to have solved that problem. That's great. So, but this is a different thing. This is just a situation where it's a bottleneck. It's a natural geographic thing. You can't build any, there's no point in building a canal there. They can get, naval traffic through there. So look, it drives the prices up for all of us, but I'd rather pay more than have no supply. At least we have it in the stores. At least the shelves aren't empty. And in this case, our refineries aren't empty.
Yeah, and there's really doesn't seem to be any hurry by the United States Navy to open it up. And we're attacking coastal weaponry that can be shot at, sea mine, unmanned drones floating on the water or subsurface. We're attacking those types of defenses and offensive weapons and those kind of things to destroy them. But we're really not moving any action towards doing an invasion and those kind of things. Right. I mean, the president's even said, well, the Chinese ought to be getting some ships in here, take control of this place. They're the ones that need it. They get 90% of their oil out of there.
Yeah, so that's because the best idea is to try to change the regime, to try to knock that regime out, as opposed to going after every little gun battery or drone battery that they might have. We'll never get all of them. Who knows where they all are? Better to get a new leader in there who says we're going to stop these attacks. Simple as that.
Yeah. So what does it do economically if the Chinese, as is being reported this morning, are now buying American oil in order to make up for the shortfall in the Pacific region?
Well, it's actually good for the Chinese economy. They're going to buy our oil with more certainty, and at this point, a better price, a few bucks, $9-10 a barrel cheaper. They've been not buying our oil, not only because it's a little bit closer to them as far as getting it shipped to them, but they've been not buying our oil in order to hurt our economy. China's been in economic war with the United States, and I think war in many other ways as well for many years, but especially economic war with the United States. And the fact that China does not have sufficiency in oil is an advantage that we needed to be pressing for a long time in this country and weren't. And now we are. That's quite interesting. But you can see what President Trump wants. He doesn't, as much as he would like to have the countries of the world buy our oil, it sounds like he wants to get control of the Iranian oil and bring it more back to the open market like he's doing with Venezuela. I think that that's really the goal. I don't think he really wants to force even China to buy only our oil, at least not long term. I'm sure he's enjoying the days that this is going to continue. But I think he just wants to put that out on the market and make it open and free. The open market for oil is kind of a misnomer because we've had countries like Iran, and before that, when Saudi Arabia was more hostile, who would fool around with the price of oil based on for political reasons and nothing to do with the market. So imagine all the Iranian oil no longer used as a terrorist weapon or used to help our enemies. It's a big deal. It's a big change.
Yeah, it is. Do you agree that, like the president says, and has said many times, that once this is over, I think you mentioned it a minute ago, once this is over, everything's going to go back to normal. But if we drop that $3 or $4 extra bucks a barrel that the Iranians force everybody to pay by eliminating the threat there, the market's going to re-equalize very rapidly, right?
Yeah, and I also think, but I would say this, I believe, might be the last gap, the beginning of the end for oil in many ways. Not because it was too expensive, but simply because the countries like Saudi Arabia and many of our businesses here in the United States are seeing the moment now where it's going to be so heavy, the supply is going to be so great in other parts of the world. We aren't going to be that kind of a major importer. We're going to go back to being a country that builds the infrastructure for them. We will go to Saudi Arabia and Iran and all these other countries and build their pipelines and build their refineries and build their wells. And that's going to be a great business. But the actual commodity of oil being sold all over the world because this region you can't get it from, but these guys are under sanction. I believe those days are over. Those days are about to end. And that's going to change the market drastically and change the way we do energy, not for the greening reasons of the gas. The Greens for years have been praying for oil to go through the roof so that we would not want to pay for it, and that we would pay for these relatively also very expensive green energy. Well, it's not going to happen that way. It's going to happen because it's too easy to get, because the price is too low, and then we're going to look for maybe some other sources because what's the point? We should look for other ways to power ourselves. It's just kind of funny. It's counterintuitive But when you think about it hard enough, it makes sense.
Come on, Jake, you're being too positive. We got to take a break. When we come back, we'll talk about the NATO countries and how they're putting their foot in their mouth every 5 seconds with Jake Novak. I'll be right back on Worldview Tube.
News is moving faster than ever, and so are we. Worldview Tube brings you 24/7 live stream coverage and now real-time alerts when it matters most. Once you have the Worldview Tube app installed, exit the app and navigate your way to Settings. In Settings, locate the tab labeled Notifications. Select the Notifications tab. Scroll down until you locate the Worldview Tube app icon. Select the tab, and here you can turn on and customize your notification experience for the Worldview Tube app. News doesn't wait, and neither should you. Turn on push notifications to stay informed. Every headline as it happens.
And I've been a big supporter of NATO. And one of the reasons why I've been a supporter of NATO is because I believe that these basing rights give us leverage and give us flexibility and operational capability all over the world. But if NATO is just about us defending Europe if they're attacked, but them denying us basing rights when we need them, that's not a very good arrangement. That's a hard one to stay engaged in and say this is good for the United States. So all of them's going to have to be re-examined. All of it's going to have to be re-examined.
Welcome back to the Rob Maness Show. It's More War Monday, and we're live on Worldview Tube and our X Spaces simulcast. And my guest is Jake Novak of WABC Radio. He's on the radio out of New York City on WABC every weekend now, plus all of his other endeavors that you all know about. So you need to go track him down, follow him, listen to that show, and spread it all around. Well, Jake, we had a question just before we went to the break in the live audience. Let's go ahead and take that. Go ahead, Shel.
Okie dokie. I believe this has to do with the Strait of Hormuz. If I can find that question again. Hold on one second, gentlemen. Can we monetarily suspend that global connection when we have plenty of supply here? And that is from Whitehead, sir.
Well, to do that, you'd have to create a whole new trading market. Right now, we have the New York Mercantile Exchange where we trade oil here in the United States. We'd have to create an entirely different market, and it would still not, you can't divorce it. Oil is like oxygen. It doesn't, you can't sell it for that different a price if the rest of the world is buying it for something else. Because why? If the rest of the world, let's say, is buying oil at $120 a barrel, and we're trying to sell it here for $60, what kind of idiot in the United States isn't going to try to ship their oil overseas to get double their money? You get the point? You can't do that. So that's the point. We really can't completely divorce it in that way. I wish we could. But again, the companies that do that hard work, and can we just stop for a second and just talk again about how amazing it is, the entire process of getting oil out of the ground or out of the ocean floor. I mean, the whole process is so hard. First, you got to get it out of the ground or the ocean floor. You got to get it refined. It's incredible. It's an incredible miracle of modern engineering. Every single day, we're just so used to it, we don't realize how hard it is. Well, when you work that hard to get that kind of commodity out there, you're not going to say, well, I'll just keep selling it here in the United States for half price. It's not going to be that way. These companies own that oil. They've done the work and made the investment for it. And they're not going to play that game. And we, of course, have little things called big tankers and other things like that and pipelines that will allow them to deliver it to the market. Well, they'll pay the highest stop price for their product.
Yeah, it's because we have this thing called a market, and we want it to be a free market to the max extent possible. And that gets to the subject of this segment, Jake, and that is it's the North Atlantic Treaty Alliance, NATO, and our so-called non-allies now is what I call them, a lot of them. But those countries are in China and South Korea and Japan, and the president named them all today in his press conference. He got a question about it, including Japan and South Korea, because he said none of them are stepping up to get control of the strait, which is they're the users of this primarily, and they're the ones that are going to be hurt the most. I mean, we're going to pay a little extra for fuel at the pump, and those kind of things, which is going to be a temporary drive in higher prices across the board. But It's the Europeans and the Asians that are going to hurt the most of this, and none of them, friend or foe, is willing to step up because the United States has always done that job. Well, you heard Rubio in the clip there. I think we're done with that.
Yeah, and they're also not smart enough. I mean, you've heard me talk many times with you about how political consultants in the United States are all bad at what they do. And the reason why I'm not a paid professional political consultant is because I give good advice. You have to give bad advice and be stupid to be a political consultant, and a bad person, by the way.
Yeah.
You know, it's amazing to me. A lot of people are coming up with what sounds like a really good excuse. Well, these European countries are so overrun with Islamist migrants that they're afraid to stand up to Iran, and because they're afraid there'll be a bunch of riots in their country or they'll be voted out of office. These are the dumbest people in the world. Do they not understand the difference between Sunni and Shia? The overwhelming number of Islamist migrants in Europe and in the United States as well, frankly, are Sunni Muslims. What kind of idiot doesn't understand that if Keir Starmer or Emmanuel Macron, you should go in front of your country and say, the Iranians have been doing about 90% of their fighting in this war, killing Sunni Muslims. That's all they've been doing, really. They really haven't gotten anybody else for the most part. They've gotten a few Israelis. That's very sad. They've gotten, you know, again, fewer than 20 Americans, whatever it is. But that, I stand up for Sunni Islam and the Sunni and for Islamic unity and peace. And we in Britain and France will stand with the United States to stop this killer. But how hard? I mean, is there no one smart enough in the British government? Don't they have Cambridge and Oxford? Don't they have the Sorbonne in France? Don't they? I mean, what kind of morons are these people who don't understand who? I mean, they don't even know who their migrants are. That's the thing. You know, oh, we're open to all people. You don't even. You are so separated from them, and you put them in these no-go zones and these ghettos. You don't even know who your migrants are. You have no idea who they are. You probably all think all Muslims are the same. You probably all think all people. That's really what we're dealing with here, Rob. And they're so stupid. They are. So now Japan doesn't have that excuse. They have almost no migrants in their country. I don't believe they have any migrants in South Korea either. They're just worried about if that were the only reason, then we would get their support. If migrants were the only reason why we're not getting support in Iran, then we would maybe get those countries to support us. But they're also afflicted with the same problems that we have so many Americans afflicted with, which is a hatred of Donald Trump. I don't think that the Japanese prime minister hates Donald Trump, but she doesn't love him either, even though she's been friendly, and I think she's great. They are all worried about proving to the world once again that the United States is truly the most dominant country and decent country in the world. And a lot of other countries don't want to pay that homage to us. And they'll go as far as damaging their own economies and their own safety to do so. That's really a big part of it, too. It's not just about fear of Islamists. It's not just because they don't have a good military. All of that, as President Trump said, the easy part, the hard part's done. It's also because they have felt since the end of the Cold War that they no longer have to bow down to American dominance. And guess what? They still do until they come up with something better, which they haven't done.
Well, I mean, yeah, when you look at their governance, it's becoming more and more totalitarian as time goes by. They're not becoming more free. Even their own people, especially the native people, whites, will tell you. I just read one today from somebody over there. Yeah, it's very unfortunate the path that our countries have gone. We've strayed away from the concept of American freedom, like America has, and America has not strayed away from that. Regardless of what our internal problems have been the last 25 years or so, we have not strayed away from that value. And that is concerning. But should people be concerned if NATO dissolves about the Russians taking Western Europe?
No, I don't think the Russians have that capacity, but they should be concerned because we're having this conversation in the first place, that Europe has become so weak. You know, one of the things that we have to remember about the 1980s and the strengthening of NATO under Ronald Reagan and Margaret Thatcher, et cetera, is there were many factors working all at once to strengthen that alliance. First of all, you had a Soviet regime that was pointing more missiles towards Europe. Second of all, you had good people cheerleading the alliance. People even like the Pope. Remember when we had a Pope who was an anti-communist? We've had two popes in a row who are absolute communists now. And if you don't think that matters, especially in Europe, you're wrong. It really does matter. They're not religious. But when a voice like the Pope feels so politically pressured to be a communist, like, again, we've had 2 popes in a row who are communists. Clear and simple. It's amazing to me that they don't understand that communism has no room for religion. They'll find that out the hard way at some point. But that's what they're dealing with. And we don't have a Thatcher. We don't have a number of other people. Right now, the only voice telling the truth to the Europeans is Donald Trump. And it's the fact he can't do that on his own. He just can't, because there have to be other people within Europe. And I'm not talking about a Nigel Farage or some other. It has to be a real leader in Europe who's actually leading a country. And they're not doing it. And they're not telling the truth. So NATO is already dead, in my opinion. There's no way that NATO can really scramble to do anything effective anyway. They are completely leaderless. And they're very, very confused about. They decided that to allow the United States to be the dominant nation again in everyone's mind, it always has been, is a problem. They don't want that.
Yeah. Now, considering that Turkey is a NATO member, and you have these other NATO members like France and Spain cutting deals directly with the Iranians to use the Strait of Hormuz, how would the dissolution of NATO reset both the national security geopolitical table, but also the economic table, if that were to happen?
Well, it's already dissolved. I believe that the NATO has already been dissolved, that they're making cutting deals and they're not honoring it. So it's already dissolved. So how would officially dissolving it is the question. Well, it would save us a lot of money. Even before all this war started, and even before Donald Trump became president, I wrote many editorials talking about how we have way too many expensive military bases all over the world. In many places, we don't need them. We needed to start closing those a long time ago. And one of the reasons why we didn't close them was not for strategic concerns. It was because we were trying to help. We didn't want to hurt the local economy in some of these places where the bases really helped employ people and create an economy. Well, now we really should have absolutely no alliance for that reason. We really should have no allegiances for that. We should not consider that anymore. Too bad. They've given us, this will save us a lot of money to close a lot of these bases. It's a huge part of our military budget. We need military bases in different places, so it won't be a complete reduction. Not every base closed will be completely lost. It'll be just that number will be replaced. Will be found somewhere else. But honestly, that's a big part of it, and a big part of our spending will be reduced. This alliance is already done. Will this encourage some of the bad guys in the world to do more bad things to former NATO countries who used to be worried about American retaliation? I don't know. What have they not done already? Iran is a terrorist nation and has planned terrorist attacks against every NATO country for a long time. So what's the difference there? Russia has been incredibly aggressive. I don't think they have the wherewithal to take over countries, conquer them like in the old Soviet days, but they'll wage economic war against them like they're doing anyway now. It's already dissolved. Let's stop paying that bill. I think we should stop paying that bill. I really do.
Well, yeah, I mean, it takes away. You brought up the Russians. It actually removes the one of the main Russian narrative talking points. NATO's encroaching on our near abroad. If NATO no longer exists, then they're free to negotiate with all the countries in their near abroad and more to come up with trade deals, economic agreements, national security agreements, even. And those kind of things. And I'm glad you said that about bases, Jake, because, Romania is a major base in the war, in Operation Epic Fury, that has let us use the base that we built and designed to do this kind of thing. So just because NATO dissolves and the U.S. leaves NATO doesn't mean we're not going to have relationships with other countries, right?
Right. And it's interesting that you said that about Russia and its relationship with Europe. Well, let's get back to the markets for a second. What if we get a situation now where sanctions are removed, these kinds of things are going on, and then you have a price war? Russia wants to have more influence in Europe, so they might have to offer oil and gas for less. And then you have a price war that will drive the price down really quickly. So economically, a dissolution of NATO could be very, very positive economically. It won't be great for some of these local towns that have no strategic value that will lose their American base. But, tough noogies. You decided to do this, and now we're not going to flood your town with American consumers anymore, because that's what those guys, when they're not in active duty, are. They're consumers.
Yeah, exactly right. Well, I don't want to be too positive because war doesn't isn't a very positive activity, but you can have positive outcomes if you manage the outcomes in the in-state status of the rest of the world when you finally can get to the end of it. We'll be right back with our last break, and we'll talk about the phenomenal rescue of Duke 44 Alpha and Bravo. That's Dude 44 Alpha and Bravo. You'll know what I'm talking about in the next segment. I'll be right back with Jake Novak.
What if millions around the world could access Bible teaching and worldview training for free right now without hitting a paywall? That's exactly what happens every day at worldviewtube.com because of the Worldview Weekend Foundation. We don't lock our live stream behind PayPal. We don't restrict our content to members only. Instead, the Worldview Weekend Foundation helps cover the cost of delivering free educational and ministry programming to people across the nation and around the world. And it's not just programming. My Sunday night church service, where I taught verse by verse through Revelation for 18 months, and now I am teaching through the book of Daniel, is made possible through the support of our church, Worldview Weekend Foundation. If you believe this kind of truth-centered biblical teaching must continue, donate today. Go now to worldviewfoundation.com. You'll also find our mailing address and phone number there if you'd rather give by phone or mail. That's worldviewfoundation.com. Thank you.
That's what it is, came to be. I covered this all weekend, guys. I want to take you to the wall and show you the training, planning, and execution of this Combat Search and Rescue, or CSAR, is nothing short of extraordinary. Let's go back to where it all begins on Thursday, right? You have the lucky shot by Iranians, and they hit our F-15E Strike Eagle, and the plane goes down. The pilot, they both eject. The pilot, of course, is one who is quickly recovered, but that weapons systems officer, the guy in the back, is injured, and he leans into his SEER training. His survival and evasion training kicks in. Even injured, he's able to get as far away from the downed aircraft as he can, gets into a mountainous area, climbs some 7,000 feet, and hides in a mountain crevice, and he activates his beacon, right? That beacon, as he's hiding in that mountain crevice, is what the CIA initially begins to track and try and find his exact location, which has been described as finding a needle in a haystack. The CIA also at the same time launches a deception campaign, leading the Iranians to believe that he was being rescued already and being taken out on an exfil, extracting him on the ground to a maritime rescue. That confuses them. Iranians start chasing that. Meanwhile, the U.S. puts in special operators, hundreds of them, in a little makeshift forward arming and refueling point south of Isfahan. Now, we'll go back to the next one. Iran, by the way, is putting out on state media a $60,000 reward for any civilian to capture him and hold him. But the special ops involved, you have two helicopters that get hit, aircraft ultimately had to be destroyed. Remember, there's two parts to a rescue: getting in, finding the individual, and getting out. And often getting out is the hardest part. Meanwhile, we have MQ-9 Reaper drones and tactical air support used to protect the area, because while you have this forward refueling point set up to get him out, the Iranians are starting to attack that. So all while they're searching for the airmen, they're trying to strike from the air. The Iranians are trying to get in them. And of course, President Trump telling us that the colonel was injured, but he's going to be fine. This was by far the most complex search and rescue mission that has ever occurred in U.S. history. At Annapolis, at the Naval Academy, at West Point, they will be studying this for years. And here's the real remarkable part of it, is that in all of it, even as they came under fire for that airstrip they'd set up, and it was a tough fight, I'm told from my sources, they got out without a single U.S. casualty. And when you look at the risk that President Trump took in ordering such a large mission, Secretary Hegseth, President Trump, if this would have gone south, it would have been really bad for them. But yet we've seen in the first year, not only this rescue, but we saw the Maduro raid. Back last summer, we had Midnight Hammer. This has been a military that is executed flawlessly, a far cry from the previous administration in that Afghanistan withdrawal, which was disastrous.
Welcome back to the Rob Maness Show. It's More War Monday, and the Iran's continued destruction is the name of the show today. And this episode that you just heard described, the rescue, the Combat Search and Rescue, or CSAR, of Dude 44 Alpha and Dude 44 Bravo. That was the call sign of the F-15E Strike Eagle that was shot down. It is gonna be studied. I don't know if it's the most complex one. I think people like to characterize things like that these days, but I've studied them all. I've had the SERE training. I was a combat squadron commander. I'm a combat aviator, backseater, weapons systems officer in the B-1. So I understand this. And here's one of the things we're not going to do in this segment. We're not going to talk about tactics, techniques, and procedures because we don't want to give anything to the bad guys. But we will talk about information that's been released by the chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff, the President of the United States, the Secretary of War, and the CIA. My guest is Jake Novak. And Jake, one of the things that's amazing about this is that our European brothers, especially, and our leftist brothers and sisters in this country, and even some of our conservative brothers and sisters are saying, you got to be kidding me. You're going to burn $300 million of aircraft up just to get one guy out? Well, that's the way American military values have always been. We don't leave anybody behind. Even if they're dead, we don't leave them behind if we can do anything about it. We will. Those are just machines. They could be replaced in a year.
Yeah, I think it's really, really fitting that this happened in Iran because, Colonel, before our hostages were taken in 1979 and held for 441 days until the end of January of 1981, it was a known rule in the world that you don't mess with Americans overseas. You just don't do that. You don't kidnap us, you don't attack us, you don't take us hostage, whether you're civilian or military. And of course, those people working in the embassy were kind of a hybrid, right? They were government officials, not exactly full civilians, but certainly not active duty military. And I'm sorry to say that until just this war started, Colonel, I don't think Iran was ever made to pay for that hostage taking. I don't really think they were. And so, in other words, it ended that unwritten rule throughout the world that everyone knew, oh, don't mess with the Americans because then you'll get payback. So this wasn't just $300 million of jet aircraft or plane aircraft that was destroyed for one guy. It's the price. It's part of the price of the punishment that Iran is finally getting for something they did to this country and did to Americans all over the world for a really, really long time. So I think it's fitting that this happened in Iran, and hopefully this will bring us back to where we were before that. The other thing is, you know this better than I do. These makeshift airstrips that they build in these hot zones are notoriously crap. They sink into the sand. They're not good. We had missions in Iraq where guys tried to take off from those strips and they crashed and died. So it could have been really, really bad had they used those planes. So they did have to leave them there. I'm glad they didn't attempt to take off. I guess they didn't, or at least they certainly didn't go far with it because that darn strip was clearly starting to fail. So this is not even an equation. We would have had a lot more dead if they didn't abandon those planes, and of course they had to destroy them after that.
Yeah, and the IRGC did have a lot more dead. It's my understanding that TAC Air that Griff was talking about there, four B-1 bombers dropped over 100 2,000-pound JDAMs, which are really good at destroying convoys, by the way. And the B-1 uses a sniper pod and has a synthetic aperture radar that's got some special capability to it. They bit into the wrong apple, those IRGC and Besiege guys trying to get up and get at that guy. And it's my understanding he got pretty close based on the press briefing the president and the chairman and the secretary had just before we came on the air. But this is a phenomenal operation. Yeah. And the message that it should be sending to the Iranian government and their military is what?
Well, that there's really nothing. Basically, any talk of moderating our attacks, our tactics, is really just talk. It's clear we're going full bore. The Israelis are going full bore right now. I haven't seen any evidence of any moderation. Again, the only example being, yes, President Trump has on a number of occasions now delayed this promised attack on Iranian infrastructure. That's because he's a negotiator. And it's so embarrassing to see people who are so non-business savvy think that somebody asking for or demanding something on a certain day or at a certain number and then taking a smaller number is somehow a chicken or somehow isn't smart. I mean, these people don't understand how it works. You ask for the moon and you take a little bit less than that. That's how it works in business, and that's how it should work in political negotiations and in military situations as well. And I'm embarrassed for these people who think this, who just don't even understand how it works in the real world. But you said at the beginning of the segment that we weren't going to give away some of the tactical stuff. There's another developing story in my industry, in the news media here. President Trump saying in the news conference that when the jet was downed on Thursday, nobody knew publicly that there was a second crew member, and somebody in the news media leaked that from who knows how, and we're going to try to find out who that is, and there could be some charges filed here. I thought about that when we first heard about it on Thursday evening or Friday morning. I thought, wait a minute, why are we telling everybody there's a guy missing? Why are we making it really clear? Why are we telling? I mean, that was surprising to me. And so to me, that's also a brewing controversy right now. And maybe we'll find out who's responsible for that. It would be interesting if it's a known name in the American news media and they aren't able to get out from under that. They shouldn't if that's what happened.
Yeah, not only that, but showing videos of the King C-130s refueling the Jolly Green Giant Black Hawk helicopters inside Iran at low altitude. I mean, it's incredible to be. Look, I'm fine with reporting it now that it's over, but it's incredible to be reporting on that in the moment, because there are location metadata that go with those videos, and the enemy is looking at it. What is going on with the media in this country? I get it that maybe being broadcast overseas, we can't do anything about that, but the media in this country is supposed to be on the side of the American people, and those are Americans over there, Jake.
Yeah, the media is very much owned by our enemies. Some of them literally financially owned by them. In other cases, they get their talking points from enemy sources, and they just take them because they're lazy and they're stupid. So that's a double problem. This is why people like Barry Weiss aren't going to be able to make much of a difference, because it's not a question of, we need to be a little bit more fair to Trump and his voters. No, you have a literal insurgency in your newsroom. People who are getting their talking points from our enemies.
Exactly.
And a lot of them don't even know it. A lot of them don't even know it. They just get an email from some organization with bullet points. So it's not going to work just to make them a little bit more middle of the road in their editorials. That's not how it's going to work. And that's what's going on here. The Iranian Tokyo Rose Network is getting a lot of oxygen in American mainstream media. They're not just coming up with this on their own. They're not smart enough. They're not smart enough to do this.
Yeah, absolutely right. All right, I got a question in the audience. We're going to take it really fast, Shell. Got a minute left. Go ahead.
We have AJ, sir.
Thank you, Shell. Jake, do you expect Israel to go further than United States post Tuesday? Thank you.
Well, they certainly will in Lebanon. I mean, Israel will now be engaged in Lebanon much longer than the United States is going to be engaged in Iran. And that, in many ways, is still being engaged against Iran, because we're talking about Hezbollah, which is basically is Iran, and that's so yes, inside of Iran, intelligence-wise, sure, but this is the big question to me in this war right now. Not that we're going to end up destroying Iran's military. It's when will the resistance feel that they are comfortable enough to get going, and then I'll be able to answer your question about how much longer Israel will be in the physical country of Iran.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. And I do want to add that we also thank the Israeli intelligence agencies for providing intel during the rescue operation. That has been confirmed by the Prime Minister himself, I believe. late yesterday that this was truly a combined operation, not just the United States going it alone. And that should tell you something, folks, because they went and did their best to get our American out, too, even though it probably cost them something. Well, Jake, thank you very much. I appreciate you coming on today. Where can folks find you real quick?
At JakeNY on X Twitter, and I'm at WABC News, WABC Radio. You can find that online, too.
All right, man. Thank you very much. Tomorrow, Training Tuesday, Enrique Terrio will be back with us. We're talking about who's going to be the new Attorney General. Should it be Eagle Ed Martin, the current pardon officer, or the President of the United States? I think so. We'll see what Enrique thinks.
Hello, I'm Brandon House. Would you like to gain access to over 20 years of my radio shows, TV shows, my books? I've written 15 books, and most of those books are ebooks now. And we have conference DVDs, conferences where we filmed our conferences at the Ozarks, literally starting 20 years ago. It's all available in our archived vault. All you have to do is go to worldviewtube.com/vault, worldviewtube.com/vault, and for a reasonable monthly fee, you gain access to over 20 years of Christian worldview programming, news, information, books, documentaries, and a powerful search engine. And folks, it's a great way not only to educate yourself, equip yourself, but it's a big way that you can help fund our continuation as a broadcast network. Please check it out. worldviewtube.com/vault, worldviewtube.com/vault, and help us continue pushing out a Christian worldview.
What if millions around the world could access Bible teaching and worldview training for free right now without hitting a paywall? That's exactly what happens every day at worldviewtube.com because of the Worldview Weekend Foundation. We don't lock our live stream behind PayPal. We don't restrict our content to members only. Instead, the Worldview Weekend Foundation helps cover the cost of delivering free educational and ministry programming to people across the nation and around the world. And it's not just programming. My Sunday night church service, where I taught verse by verse through Revelation for 18 months, and now I am teaching through the book of Daniel, is made possible through the support of our church, Worldview Weekend Foundation. If you believe this kind of truth-centered biblical teaching must continue, donate today